Steve Spurrier took pride in taking shots at Philip Fulmer and Peyton Manning, neither of which were involved in not recruiting Steve Spurrier to Tennessee and running a pro style offense, which is what Steve Spurrier wanted out of Johnson City, which is why he went to he went to Florida, won a Heisman Trophy there. So I think it's twofold. I think he's always got kind of I don't really like Tennessee all that much because they didn't recruit me. But I do think that there was some gamesmanship being played. I know he would call John Adams the week before the Tennessee game and he'd say things like, well, you got to love that Pat Summitt. She knows how to win a championship. And that was before Philip Fulmer won a championship. There was the, it's good. Peyton Manning's coming back for another year. Maybe be a 3-time Citrus Bowl MVP. That was a pretty good line. And then there was, can't spell citrus bowl without a U and a T. He had a bunch of good lines. And he hasn't stopped. You just haven't heard from him as much. He has a really nice upscale sports bar, and those sayings are on the coasters. Now, there's sayings about Florida State and other teams too. It's not just purely a Rip Tennessee thing. But it's not over. And it continues now with Arch Manning. What the H? Brought to you by Rick Terry and Rick Terry Jewelry Design.
What the H?
Wow, I never worked hard on anything. What a cool life.
For real? The Dave Hooker Show with Caleb Calhoun. Represented by T. Scott Jones. ThanksandJones.com. Tennessee's trial attorney. From the Ted Russell Ford Lincoln Studio, East Tennessee's #1 volume and customer service dealer. Ted Russell Ford and TedRussellLincoln.net. Now to the Dave Hooker Show on Off the Hook Sports.
Trevor says, have the chair covered in red velvet with a gold tassel trimming like a king. I like that. Down with the haters. Amen, brother. All right. What did Steve Spurrier have to say? What the H?
So Steve Spurrier kind of took a very logical shot at one Arch Manning recently when talking about all the hype surrounding Texas this year. And I got to say, he kind of has a point, but which he always kind of had a point. That's the part nobody wanted to admit, was he always kind of had a point with his little gags, didn't he?
Yes.
And so here's what he said about Arch. He said, quote, and this was on another duly noted podcast. We've had Pat Dooley on this show. And he says, quote, people picking Texas to win the SEC in football. They've got Arch Manning already win the Heisman too. And my question is, if he was this good, how come they let Quinn Ewers play all this time last year?
I think there's some truth to that. I thought that Arch Manning would overtake Quinn Ewers early in the season and maybe even in the preseason. Ewers held on to that job longer than I thought he would. And I don't think that's a great sign for Arch Manning. I mean, let's face it. If Arch Manning's a B+ quarterback, that's not good enough coming from that family and playing for the University of Texas. If he's not better than Quinn Ewers, then you've got a problem. You've missed. And missing on a Manning is hard to do. And I don't think they're going to miss. I think he's going to be elite. But I was a little surprised that Arch didn't win the job out of the chute or win it at some point earlier in the season over Ewers. I didn't think Ewers was that good.
I think coaches are slaves to seniority sometimes.
I agree.
Ewers decided to come back, and it was like he had already been the starter for 2 years, and it's like, what are you going to do? Bench him his last year in favor of the freshman phenom? You're not going to do that. And a lot of this was about keeping the team together. I mean, let's just talk about this. Tim Tebow was a freshman phenom, and we all knew that he was the perfect fit for Urban. I think the minute you saw Florida land Tim Tebow and you saw Urban Meyer's all, but you were like, they're going to be unstoppable, weren't you? When he gets there. Urban Meyer still started Chris Leak over Tim Tebow his senior year. Leak's senior year and Tebow's freshman year. And I think it was kind of that route. Now wait
a second. I didn't have a problem with Chris Leak starting the majority. Well, he started every game, and then Tebow came in. Tebow was not an accurate passer. Leak was. I mean, I think between the tens that Leak was probably a better option at the time. So I guess I would take umbrage with that.
Not for Urban Meyer's spread, though. That's the thing. Urban Meyer had to make so many concessions in his spread offense for Chris Leak. I mean, the fact that he won a national title in 06, we don't talk about that enough. That like that was it's one of the better coaching job national titles of all time. Given the fact that he tweaked his spread offense so much for Chris Leak, who was a bad fit for it. Charlie Strong won that national title with Florida's defense that year. But I think that where I'm getting at is, I think there was a seniority factor on why they did it. So I'm not so sure Spurrier has the like. He does have a point, but it's more of a shot at Sark for making that decision than anything else. And look, there's some personal ties here, because for those who don't know the story, and I know Dave knows the story, in 1995, Tennessee's going to play Florida in the Swamp. Sports Illustrated has a cover that they're about to release with Peyton Manning on the cover of it. And I think you know about that story, Dave, right? Where Sports Illustrated had Peyton Manning on the cover of their magazine. We're ready to send it out. Everybody knew it. Florida got wind of it. They knew Peyton Manning was going to be on the cover. And that's when Florida scored 36 straight points or 41 points in the second half in the Swamp. And after trailing 30-21 at halftime, beat Tennessee 62-36. And Spurrier was leaving Danny Warfel in the fourth quarter and running up the score. Sports Illustrated came back, switched it, and put Danny Warfel on the cover and not Peyton Manning right after that. And
I was not aware of that.
Yeah, that's a real story that happened. Sports Illustrated was planning to put Peyton Manning on their cover, and they decided to put Danny Warfel on the cover in Florida after Steve Spurrier in Florida in 95 torched Manning in his first start. By the way, it wasn't even Manning's fault. He dropped 36 points. Not his fault that John Chavis gave up 62 points. But that was what happened there. And I think Spurrier has always taken umbrage with... For those who don't know, Spurrier is not that much into recruiting. You know that, Dave. He didn't care about recruiting. He hates that aspect of college football. He just wants to call plays.
Great.
He's always had disdain for high school recruits coming in with a ton of hype without producing anything. That's always been an issue of his. And he wants to go as a coach, he always wanted to go out of his way to humiliate recruits that get that level of hype. That's why he loved taking shots at Peyton Manning during that time and loved owning Peyton Manning.
Yeah, but the sad part about it is that Peyton Manning would have taken that offense to another level, and he didn't have the ego that Steve Spurrier detested.
He didn't. It wasn't his fault. Spurrier hated the hype he was getting. And I mean, again, I think we would both agree that, like, entering Manning's sophomore year, Danny Warfel was a junior and had been more productive to that point. So I think Spurrier felt the type of way that Manning might be on the cover and not Danny Warfel. And I think he had no problem going out of his way to embarrass Tennessee in that game. I mean, remember, there was a lot of criticism that he left, that he kept scoring at will, which was funny because then the next year when they played at Neyland Stadium, just to make a point, he set on a lead when he got up 35-0, remember? And you know, Tennessee, to this day, I love Tennessee fans saying, oh, Tennessee and Peyton Manning fought back and only lost 35-29. I'm like, okay, if Spurrier wanted to, he could have he could have scored 3 more touchdowns. He chose to sit on that lead.
Well, he had a really good running game that year, so it easy to rely on that once he had that sort of lead. And I think it was smart moves. I mean, I don't know if it's motivated by ill will, but that game was not close, even though it ended up, 35-28?
35-29.
Yeah.
I mean, the game was not that close.
It was not that close at all. I mean, you could tell, pardon me, by being around Tennessee's football team afterwards, that did not feel like a close loss, one that you build on whatsoever. So, but is the Steve Spurrier thing funny, or has it gotten old?
I think it's still funny because Steve Spurrier, the only way it wouldn't be funny is if his jokes got old, but he actually makes the best. He's still, like, his quips are usually relevant, aren't they? And I think that's why they're funny. I mean, it'd be one thing if he was still making a joke about Tennessee going to the Citrus Bowl in the mid-90s, but he's not.
He's topical. He's changing up his act. I like that. What the H? And it's brought to you by Rick Terry Jewelry Design.
Having been in the jewelry industry for a long time in the Knoxville community, I saw a need for a jeweler, a real jeweler.
Our ability to do these designs has really been based on the customers bringing new things in and challenging us as a store. Our goal is not to tell anybody what they want Our goal is to listen to what they want and then help them get there.
Schedule your consultation today to get your special someone the perfect custom gift just in time for the holidays.